Franz Ronke was born in 1855 and arrived in Frankenmuth with his German-born parents in 1856. Franz was always referred to as an idea man, a visionary, and became a business entrepreneur in his 20s. Franz was among the 22 founders of St. John's Lutheran Church and owned the property on Tuscola Street where the original church was built. He was instrumental in bringing telephone service to Frankenmuth and in attracting E.W. Gallagher to town to establish a local newspaper. He was the second president of the village of Frankenmuth. In 1889, he established the Cider and Jelly Works Company and later expanded the business by adding a woolen mill in the back. Franz was also one of the founders of the Frankenmuth Milling Company, located on the banks of the Cass River. The company used the water's current to generate power and provide the village of Frankenmuth with electricity, allowing the old kerosene street lamps to become a thing of the past. In 1912, Franz became the founder and first president of the Frankenmuth Power and Light Company. He hired Fred Nuechterlein as a clerk to collect light bills, be treasurer, and to keep the books. Fred had previously worked as a teller and cashier at the bank. The original Power and Light Company's office was in a storefront where the old Waterworks building was located. The current Chamber of Commerce building stands there now. Fred Nuechterlein was on the board of directors for Frankenmuth Power and Light Company from 1912 through 1918. In 1919, the company built a new building and moved uptown. Fred was put in charge of the new office, which was located at 146 South Main Street. He continued to run the company until 1926, when Consumers Power bought out Frankenmuth Power and Light Company and set up a substation behind the building. Fred started his own business at that time, operating as Fred G. Nuechterlein, electrical contractor, and also sold appliances.
My formal training in electricity and wiring I got at Arthur Hill Trade School for 1 year, where I went to school for 4 hours in the morning and then took the other 4 hours in the afternoon at Arthur Hill High School to get my credit hours in for graduating from high school. My training in radio and electronics, I started in a correspondence school at home from 1940 until the early part of 1942. And then I was getting close to being drafted, so I figured that if I want to finish this, I should go to residence school down in Detroit. The residence school was owned by the same company that had the correspondence school that I had started training with. I got drafted in December the 21st in 1942. I served in the military until December the 21st of 1945, and I was doing work in radar maintenance, and that was an area that the Signal Corps had trained me for, and it proved to be a very good training for my later work in television when I came home. When I was over in France, Uncle Fred wrote me a letter and asked me whether I would consider going to work for him, because he had a radio and phonograph business and he was having problems with finding somebody to do the repair work. And I had no commitments for a job anywhere else, so I immediately jumped on it and I said, sure, I'll come to work for you. So in January, first week in January in 1946, I went to work for Fred Nuechterlein as a radio repairman. That was shortly after my discharge from the Army in 1945. Uncle Fred sold the business, Fred G. Nuechterlein, to me in 1952, and then we changed the name to Nuechterlein Electric for the contracting and the appliance business. I had returned from the military and worked for Uncle Fred for 6 years, but when I took over the business, I placed a lot more emphasis on electronics. When Fred Nuechterlein sold the business to me in 1952, Art Rao stayed with me until 1955 and took care of the electrical contracting on the houses. But then he felt that he could do better if he went into business for himself in Reese and started up a business back there contracting. And then that left me with the need to take care of the electrical contracting and wiring the houses in Frankenmuth myself. That took me away from the appliance and electronic servicing that I had been doing before. Back in 1953, Philco had come out with a new stove that had a glass-wrapped broiler element on it, and in order to acquaint people with this new feature, we put on a cooking school down in the American Legion Hall for that time, and invited all of the women of Frankenmuth to come and see this. And we had quite a good crowd come to that. We had invited Mary Scott, who was a nationally known food lecturer and was working for Philco at that time, and she was in charge of the demonstrations. She was a lady, maybe something like the Martha Stewart that you see on television nowadays. Say about 1957, the state of Michigan went back into licensing electricians, and because I was wiring at that time, I had to get a master electrician's license. to keep on working. Before that, there had been no inspections of wiring in houses, and anybody could do the wiring. You didn't have to have a license. I sold the business in 1970 following my wife Ernestine's death. I felt I had to do that because Ernestine had been taking care of the business at the store so that I could get out and do the wiring on the houses and also do appliance repair work. I had known Tom for many years because he had lived right around the corner from me on Cass Street. He had heard that I was looking for a buyer of the business, and he made me an offer that we finally agreed on.
Hi there, I'm Tom Fechter. I was born in Frankenmuth, Michigan, and I'm honored and pleasured to be saluting Nuechterlein Electric for 50 years of service, as well being part of the success story with Lawrence Nuechterlein and Tom Erdman. In 1970, I had an opportunity to purchase Nuechterlein Electric from Lawrence with the understanding that Lawrence would work for me. The first few years we had some trying times. At the time, we were at a building that was 20 by 40 with 800 square feet. When I purchased the Nuechterlein Electric and the building that they were in for many, many years, it's kind of depressing to see a building 20 by 40 to do business out of as a warehouse, a storage space, and I knew at that time, as soon as possible, we do have to make changes. In 1971, we started making some drawings to move up to the Nuechterlein Dairy Bar, the ice cream. We made arrangements so we could rent that place and move all of our personnel and equipment and parts in that building so we could tear the old Nuechterlein Electric building down. The surprising thing, the building next to Nuechterlein Electric, the Frankenmuth Lock Company, my dad owned that with Art Mosner. And lo and behold, I'm the one that had to tear it down on him. I must say that Lawrence, with the changes that we made, moving everything up to that building, and moving that, Lawrence never complained about anything. Lawrence was very cooperative and going along with anything that we had to do or make changes in there. For a man that's been in the business as many years as he has, and I'm here, a young guy coming along and showing how we're going to make things differently, he was always very supportive. In 1972, when we built this new building and moved into it, we were quite pleased.
1973, Tom had contracted to wire the Baker Chevrolet garage on North Main Street, and we needed more help on that job. Tom Fechter then found Tom Erdman, and that's where Tom Erdman came into this story.
We received a call from Michigan State University from the Electrical Technology School stating that they have a co-op program where a person can go to Michigan State University Electrical School for 2 years. It was a program where you go to college for 1 year, you go on the job for 6 months, and then 6 months you go back to school again. The gentleman said, I have a man here, Tom Erdman. He's from Minden City, up in the thumb. Whether I would be interested, and said, yes, we'll go for it. We'll give it a try.
Hello, my name is Tom Erdman. I was brought up on a dairy farm in Minden City, Michigan, where I attended Harbor Beach Community Schools. I graduated from Harbor Beach in 1972. From there I went to Michigan State University to study to be an electrician. In March of 1973, I needed to serve an internship somewhere, and I got a job as an intern for Nuechterlein Electric working for Tom Fechter. When Tom took me in and hired me for my internship, he was real good and took me over to Franklin Street to rent a room from Ida Bayerlein. She was renting rooms at the time. So I rented a room from Ida, and she was very fun to live with.
And he learned a lot about Frankenmuth for Ida, because Ida would love to talk and talk. And sometimes Tom would answer the phone for Ida, and the people at the other end were talking in German, and Tom was lost. He didn't know what to say.
The only electrician that we had at the time of my internship was Lasse Nuechterlein. I served under him as an apprentice. We were wiring Baker Chevrolet building at that time, which was the first commercial job that we did together. You know, when we were wiring Baker Chevrolet back then, Oscar Raw Furniture, who was an electrical contractor at the time, was doing the outside work and we were doing the inside work. And Lasse played a joke on them one day after we had the garage door openers wired. We walked out into the parking lot to talk to them, and Lasse told them they had a new garage door opener that is controlled now by a voice. So he told the two electricians out there to yell and tell the door to open. And he had the door opener button in his pocket underneath his tool pouch. And so he told them to yell, "Door open," and so they yelled, and it didn't go up. And he said, "Well, you didn't yell loud enough." So he told them to yell again, and they yelled louder, and he leaned on his tool pouch, which had the door opener under it, and up went the door, and they couldn't believe the new technology we had today. It was really good for a laugh.
So when he came to work for us, he was a good guy to work with. He knew his stuff, but he hadn't had too much experience, so that's where I had to be his mentor on these jobs and help fill him in and to get him completely outlined as an electrician with experience and background knowledge.
And then went back to college in September and finished my degree. In 1974, I graduated from Michigan State University with my degree in electrical technology, where I came back to work full-time for Tom Fector.
And by the way, let me add this. Tom Urban was the top in the class that graduated from the Electrical Technology School at State. So I was very fortunate to get the top man to come to Frankenmuth.
When I came to work for Tom Fector, we also sold appliances under the Frankenmuth TV and Appliance name. Both companies, Nuechterlein Electric and Frankenmuth TV and Appliance, at that time were one corporation. Tom sent me to Whirlpool Appliance School to learn how to repair appliances for a week. I then started fixing appliances as well as wiring. We did not do enough wiring back in those days to keep both Lasse and myself busy, so I learned to fix appliances as well.
When Tom came to work in the beginning, our business was not quite successful as we would like to have be, so Tom had to do a little bit of everything. My philosophy was always, what's my job? Whatever it takes was my answer to them. And Tom was always willing to go ahead and take care of that project.
Fixing appliances was another great learning experience. I was forced to learn things that they didn't teach me at Michigan State. Of course, Tom felt that when he sent me to appliance repair school, I should be able to fix anything after that 1 week of training. I had some real trying days figuring out old appliances that broke. In school they taught me how to fix the new appliances, but it was the old ones that always broke. I had a lot of support, however, from Lasse and the other people in the shop to get things fixed. Having Lawrence Nuechterlein as my mentor was one of the best things that ever happened to me as an electrician. He has such a wealth of knowledge of everything electrical, and it helped me jumpstart my career as an electrician. We had an old cherry red van that the back doors would not shut tight. One time I had an old dishwasher in the truck and was driving down Franklin Street in front of the Frankenmuth florist, and I sped up too fast and it slid to the back of the van. It hit the doors swung open, it fell out on the street, parts were laying all over, and I was sure glad it was an old one and not a new one.
One of the funny stories that happened one time, when Tom first worked for me, he broke his arm. He called up, he said, "I can't come to work, my arm's broken." And I just said to him, "Is the cast dry yet?" He said, "Yeah, well then you can come to work."
Yeah, I can remember installing new appliances and having lots of things happen. One time a washing machine got away from me, a brand new one we were delivering, and it went down the basement stairway on its own, got all dented up, and the customer had to be given a discount, and I was in pretty big trouble.
And don't forget, when I talk to you to give you hell, don't walk away from me.
We wired a lot of houses in those days for Baker Builders. I worked with Lossie, and we maintained the highest quality standards back then as we do today. Every splice in the house was soldered and taped, and Lossie said that we'd never want to have anything come loose, so we did it. Okay, we don't solder our wires anymore today. We use splice caps, which we changed to after a few years, but we still maintain the same methods today in all of our work to maintain the highest quality.
One story I remember about Tom Erdman and I working together was out on a farm line where we had wired a house for a farmer, and we had our triplex unrolled. Tom got up on the roof of the house to fasten the triplex to the pole coming up through the roof, and I took the triplex out to the pole, put my ladder up on the pole, climbed up there and pulled the triplex up with me. But then there was enough weight in that triplex so that it sagged quite a bit, and I figured I've got to find out where I got to cut this wire so I can fasten it. So I thought, well, I'll give it a good jerk, and when I got it up as high as I can get it, I'll wrap it around the pole and then cut it afterwards and get the neutral wire through the insulator and tie it off. But what I didn't figure on was the fact that when I jerked it, the sag in that wire would swing up over the center of it and then come back down again. And when it came back down, it jerked, and I didn't have the wire wrapped around the pole yet, but I was hanging on to the wire. So when it jerked back, it jerked me off the ladder, which was about 18 feet up, and I fell down on the frozen ground below. The pain that I had in my back was so terrific, I just stretched out on the snow out there, and with Tom hollering from the roof, he says, "What are you all right or not? You need help?" I didn't answer him, so he came running down and came over to me, and he says, "Are you all right?" Well, I said, "Thomas, talk to me." So I told him, "Well, I think I broke my back." So he said, "Well, I'll call in and get an ambulance out here and pick you up, and we'll take you down to the hospital." And then he came back out again, and he was bringing some blankets along, and he says, "Here, let's wrap this around you." He says, "Don't move too much. If you got a broken back," he says, "you don't want to move too much, so just wrap these blankets around you to keep you warm till the ambulance gets here." So he had to play daddy and somebody to take care of some wounded, like a medic for me during that time too. So that was something that I appreciated, the fact that he took good care of me and got me to the hospital in a hurry.
Tom and Lawrence worked together side by side very well. The knowledge that Lawrence had from all those years of service, and Tom with the schooling that he had at Michigan State, and with Lawrence, the two together made an excellent pair of electricians. He fixed some appliances and so forth, but that was not his goal and was not my goal for him as well. As Tom came aboard, we knew we had to expand our facilities to grow and so forth. So I invested a lot of money in buildings, in equipment and trucks. And sometimes there wasn't quite enough money for me left, but I kept on investing and make sure I got the best people working for Nuechterlein Electric. All of our people at that time, even when Tom came aboard, Tom always helped to select the people that worked for us.
In 1974, I took my state journeyman's exam and passed it and became a journeyman.
In 1977, if we wanted to get more into the heavy construction business in there, we had to learn how to bid. And Tom Erdman said, MSU has a night school where you go for how to bid electrical work.
And the first job that I bid was the Frankenmuth City Hall. And we were the low bidder, and we wired the new building. Harry Beerline was the builder. I don't know if we made any money. Tom never said it at that time. In 1978, I received my state of Michigan master's license. We gradually took on more and more commercial work. I started doing a lot of work at Zender's. I fixed dishwashers, toasters, hot lines, anything in the building that didn't work. The old boiler room at Zender's was one of the biggest challenges I faced back then. If there was no steam, there wasn't any cooking, or there wasn't any heat. It seemed as if they were always breaking. Myron Dietzel, Fred List, or Eddie Zender would call all hours of the day and night that the boilers were down, and I'd have to drop everything and go fix them. A policy we still hold today for any emergency. I can remember having to reach around some very hot steam pipes to get to old controls and fix them. Steam was leaking all over, and I thought the room would blow up at any time. I was really glad when they installed the new boiler room.
Tom and Lossie both always set the higher standards of electrical work. There was never any shortcut. And of course, part of our success was always that we have people call up and the lady would say, "You fixed my kitchen light switch?" And said, "We certainly do. That's what we're here for." "Oh, that's wonderful." No job was ever too small or never too big for us to go out and take care of these people. These things also paid off in the long run, because that lady that needed maybe the light switch fixed maybe 6 months, a year, she would call up and say, "You know, my house has got the old fuses in there. Can you come and bring this up to date and put circuit breakers?" And we certainly can. So by helping that customer out, the first time she was happy with us, the second time. And we guaranteed every job that we did. And a little story I got to tell you about, sometimes a lady or man would call us up and we would fix a plug in the kitchen. And about a month later they call us up and say, "You know, ever since your electrician was here, my bedroom plug now doesn't work." Well, instead of trying to explain to her why we had nothing to do with that, we always said, "Go over there, fix the plug, no charge." But we're also interested in furthering our company in getting into the commercial business and doing maintenance work, upgrading, new service, new construction, and so forth. Tom was very good in that end of it, field. He did most of these projects as they become available.
Eddie Zender decided to dig a basement underneath the main bar side of the building, and I was in charge of wiring it. I worked there for over 1 year straight wiring the building.
As we got into more of the commercial work, we needed to hire more people. And one person that was a lot of help to us was my brother-in-law, Ray Rao.
Ray Rao was Oscar Rao's brother. He was a World War II veteran and spent 5 years as a POW. He was a survivor of the Bataan Death March. After the war, he continued his career at Carling Brewery and helped us part-time as an electrician. When he retired from Carling's, he helped me by working a lot more hours. His electrical knowledge was a great help, and he became a great friend.
So I did most of the work at Brunner's. Even when they moved down to the south end of the town, that first building they put up there, I did most of the work in there. But that was before Tom came to work for us. And later on, of course, as new additions were put up there, Tom had gotten to be pretty well versed in there, so he was the lead man on those jobs, and if I did work down there, I worked under his supervision.
We finally took out more commercial work and doing a lot of work for Zender's restaurant and also the Bavarian Inn, because now we were into the commercial work and Tom knew exactly how to handle this type of work, as well as the Star of the West was another great big challenge for us, because a lot of their stuff had to be explosion-proof material.
Tom Zender, who had taken a course at Michigan State, the same that Tom Erdman had, he was working with them, and after Tom got Tom Zender acquainted with the work there, he let Tom Zender take over.
Lossie did a lot of the work at the Bavarian Inn, and eventually the rest of our company did more of the work.
Yeah, at the time that we were working at the hotels, Tom Erdman got to work at Zender's quite a bit. In fact, he did most of their work over there, while because I was a good friend of Rudy List's, who was the maintenance manager over at the Bavarian Inn, he always asked for me whenever they had any wiring to do down there. So it ended up that I did quite a bit of, if not most of the work of electrical work at the Bavarian Inn. They did the work over at Zender's Hotel. So
as our commercial work grew and grew, while we were trying to do electrical work and as well as televisions and refrigerators, I wasn't able to spend enough time on both of them in there. So in 1986, I sold Franklinwood TV Appliance to Grand Engel. And Grand Engel was my competitor for many years and did a great job and still doing a great job for Franklinwood with his appliances.
At that time we moved from the east end of Midtown Shopping Mall down here where we are located today on the west end, and he let me buy in as a stockholder in Nuechterlein Electric. Nuechterlein Electric has always had a reputation of getting work done on time, within budget, and with the highest quality. As a result of that, we continued to get more and more commercial work. As we bid and got more work, the number of electricians we needed to wire the jobs increased.
And some of the people that started to work for us at that time was Tom Zender and Mel Volz. And both of those gentlemen graduated from Michigan State University with electrical technology schooling in there.
In 1985, we wired the first phase of the Bavarian Inn Motor Lodge. This was the biggest job we'd ever undertaken. It was completed on time and with everyone happy with our work. After wiring the lodge, our understanding on how to do larger jobs greatly increased, and our confidence as well.
We also had a little incident there where Tom Zender broke his leg. And I called up his home. His mother said, yeah, he's home in the kitchen here with his leg up. He said, well, you just tell him to come into the lodge and start working because we got to get this job done. And lo and behold, he was there. And Judy Keller walked through. She couldn't figure, what's he doing here with a broken leg? Oh, he's working.
in 1986, I got to the age of 65 years, and I figured it was time to retire. I had worked for Tom Fechter for 17 years, and we figured that it was a good time to call it quits.
In 1988, Tom Fechter and I started a computer automation company and named it Tri-City Controls. This business computerized all the heating and air conditioning in buildings. We did a lot of work at Dow Corning World Headquarters, Delta College, multiple schools and restaurants.
We were in that till about 1995, and then we sold that business to concentrate strictly in the electrical contracting business, as that was getting to be a lot more work than we ever thought we would have.
We went on to wire Phase 1 and Phase 2 of the manufacturer's Marketplace in Birch Run, Star of the West Flour Mill Large Silo Edition. We've wired all the Bavarian Inn Motor Lodge phases, Brunner Christmas editions, Star of the West Elevator, Flour Mill editions, Franklinwood River Place, the City of Franklinwood streetscape projects.
In 1997, as I retired from the business, and there, I could think of no finer man to take over the business than Tom Erdman.
He sold me his share of stock in the business. I've been with the business for 24 years, and the last 10 years before that I was a partner with Tom.
Tom worked for us, did a fantastic job. Tom and I always got along great. Before my retirement, I would say the last previous 10 years or more, Tom took over more and more of the management and bidding that I had.
After Tom Fechter retired, the traditions that Lossy started 50 years ago and continued through Tom Fechter are still ongoing today. Tom Fechter always said he never wanted to be the biggest contractor, only the best. Tom Fechter had many things to say that shape our business today. He'd always say,
to be successful in business, my philosophy has always been, what is my job? Whatever it takes. If the company is not making any money, then we won't make any money either. If the company is not healthy, no one is healthy. And the customer is always right.
Or if he was mad, he'd say,
and don't forget, when I talk to you to give you hell, don't walk away from me.
Currently, Nuechterlein Electric is located at the same address that Lossie was located 50 years ago. We're still in the business of wiring all over parts of the state of Michigan. Our current customer base consists of school projects, churches, hospitals, grocery stores, manufacturing plants, flour mills, grain elevators, retail stores, residential, new homes, and residential service. Our focus today is still on getting jobs done on time, within budget, and with the highest quality wiring. Many times each week we discuss things that maybe will enhance the quality for our customer. We do high voltage work, up to 15,000 volts. We do power quality surveys and power factor correction, trenching, bucket truck work, certified communication, cabling for computers, fire alarm wiring, energy saving studies, voltage drop calculations, and design a lot of our own wiring jobs. We are licensed professional electricians and therefore should give our customers no less than the best in wiring services. We do not tolerate substandard wiring, but up to and exceeding the National Electrical Code. All the electricians working for Nuechterlein Electric are licensed. The majority have their journeyman's license, and some have written for their master's license.
So that the tradition that Lossie started 50 years ago is still going on today, and Tom being there and his son is now working for Tom, I can see where this business could easily grow for another 50 years. And I also like to say this, without Lossie's great support, great help, I would not be where I am today. Lawrence was always very, very cooperative, and I'm sure there were times when he was wondering what direction is factory going on. But Lawrence, he was right there behind me, supported me all the way as we went on. The success of Nuechterlein Electric, let me tell you, from the whole bottom of my heart, would not have been without Lawrence Nuechterlein giving me the opportunity, and there, for my part that I spend in it, the expertise I had in running a business, and Tom Erdman coming aboard and expanding our business to the commercial industry. Without the three of us, I don't think Nuechterlein Electric would be here today. So thank you to Tom, and thank you to Lawrence. After being there all these years, over 28 years being in the electrical business, we had our men that had apprentice, a journeyman, and a master electrician. So after 27 years, I was still an apprentice. So Tom says, you gotta go, we gotta get the other people. So now I'm retired. Now my biggest problem I got is, how do you turn on this computer?
Due to the success of our business down through the years, we've pretty much outgrown our facilities. We've got an office here at 146 South Main Street where we're still located with our normal store stock, but we also have a warehouse 4 blocks away, and we're outgrowing that. And so we're purchasing some property over on List Street, and we're going to move our entire operation over there into a 4,000 square foot warehouse and build an office addition on it. And it's an exciting time for our company right now because of all the work that our customers have given us and the growth that we've experienced and the reputation that we have in our area. And so we're able to grow. We have more electricians and more trucks and more business and more people that's going to fund the growth.